Hello, welcome to the third episode of the seventh season of Bate, Papo, sobre Composição, Talks on Composition. This series is an outreach project of the Composition Department of the School of Music at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, created to engage musicians in dialogue on issues related to the world of musical composition. The project seeks to foster conversation with musicians from a variety of backgrounds, including concert music, jazz, and Brazilian popular music, with no aesthetics restrictions. The videos from the six previous years of the series, from 2020 to 2025, as well as those from the seventh season, 2026, are available on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe and activate notifications to stay informed about upcoming episodes. Programs from 2023 onward are also available in podcast format on Spotify, Apple Music, and other platforms. The team behind this project consists of myself, Liduino Pitombeira, Professor Jan Wagner, and the composer Italo Spinelli. And today we have the honor of welcome composer and pianist Gao Ping to speak about his musical work, his activities as teacher and pianist, and his perspectives in the field of composition. Welcome, Professor Gao Ping.
Thank you very much. It's what a pleasure to be here, Professor Pitombeira. Wonderful to meet you here. And Professor Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Gao Ping. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and to being here. And as usual, I will start the conversation reading a little bio about our composer in today. So, Mr. Gao Ping is a composer-pianist born in Chengdu, Sichuan, province of China. He studied in the USA in the 90s. In the demand as a composer, he has received commissions and performances from musicians around the world. His music has been featured in important festivals in Aspen, Dresden, Wellington, as well as in concerts such as the Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, and NCPA in Beijing, among others. Gao Ping's two albums, Storyteller, Gao Ping Chamber Music, and Piano Quintet Mei Lan Zu Zhu, released on Naxos labels, were critically acclaimed. His music also appears on NCPA Classics Yamaha Atoll, Vermes, and Rattles records labels. In 2025, Ping Gao-Works for piano was released on MDG in Germany and immediately received high praises from magazines such as Klassiks Heute. Class Aktuell called these works colorful, multifaceted, and original. His other albums, such as Outside the Window and Pure Wind, were released by China Records Corp and People's Music. Piano Concerto No.1 was published on Shanghai Music Publisher. Since 2020, the China Normal University Press published a series of Gao's collections of music, including piano albums Outside the Window, Wanderings, and song cycles Melodies Abandoned. In recent years, works such as Four Note Like, Concerto for Multifunction Pianist and Chamber Orchestra, and Wind Bamboo for Jiao and Harp, expressed a cross-cultural tendency and pointed at new directions of Gao's approach, combining Western and Chinese instruments. Gao is currently a professor in composition at the Chinese University of Hong Kong in Shenzhen School of Music. He previously taught at the Conservatory of Music Capital Normal University in Beijing and the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. He was appointed as the 2018 Composer in Residence of Orchestra Wellington in New Zealand, premiering orchestra songs Wild Cherry Tree. So, welcome again, Mr. Gao Ping. And as usual, I will address you a first question, asking you a little bit about your background. So could you tell us a little bit how your career has developed and how things actually started to work for you.
Well, thank you. I started learning piano about 6, 7. I was born in 70, and that's still during the time of Cultural Revolution. You understand? I was born during the time, and that stopped when at the year of 77 or so. So my first years were still during, everything was a bit, in on hold. The country was closed off to the rest of the world, largely. But my parents are musicians. My father is a composer, so in a way, in our household, we have a lot of music. So listening to a lot of different music, I was very lucky to be in touch with all kinds of music, not only classical music. My mother is a singer, so I heard a lot of opera. And my father, being a composer, I heard all the classical masters, and also the little bits of newer music he could get hold of at the time, because it's very difficult to have access to more current music. So I remember listening to perhaps the newest stuff that I could hear before my teenager years was maybe just Alban Berg or at the most Vermes. That's really very, very new to us. But so I grew up in this time, and then there was a huge change after 77, 78. There was big political reform in the country, and the country started to open up to the West, to the US. When Nixon came to China and all that. So it was maybe one of the most exciting time of recent Chinese history, and I was very lucky to be that young and to be experiencing and witnessing that huge change, and it was decisive to me. I think very formative to my view of the world, perhaps, or my personality even. So anyway, I started to learn the piano at around 6, 7, not too seriously. Then around 12 or 13, I got into the music school, kind of a middle school, high school, affiliated to a conservatory in Chengdu, the Sichuan Conservatory of Music. And there I was, I was trained to be a musician. It's very Soviet kind of influence kind of system in China. I don't know about Brazil, but we had such a long relation with the Soviet, USSR, and we basically modeled a lot of our educational system around that. So it's very much like theirs. So they train musicians very young, and basically deciding their fate at a very young age. And luckily, I still love music, and I find that's the most important thing and the exciting thing in my life. So I feel really, really lucky, because if you don't feel this way, you can become very kind of, it's a funny situation. It's a profession, but it's a profession. It's a love. Music, art. You have to love it to be really enjoy it for a long time. And I'm very lucky. So that's how I started as a piano student.
Yeah.
Very much through a long time until my doctoral years. I switched to composition officially. However, I started composing from very, very young. So I learned some piano, and then I found learning the notes was pretty hard for me. I had to sit there, and my mother was always with me and looking after I played the right notes, and I found that difficult, like perhaps most children, But then very, very soon I found that it's more fun to make my own music, improvising, and that's the starting point of composing. I think for most people, I think it's the interest of the urge of getting something that's yours, and then the next step is I try to get some manuscript papers and try to notate down what I have played and so on. So it started very early that way, all the way until my teenagers and years and college years. I always wrote music, but never. I was very much concentrating still on piano playing. Being on the stage and playing for public is so attractive for a young man. There's a certain amount of vanity attached to this, as being a performer, and I still love it, doing the performing. So that's how I developed, very much through playing the piano, learning music on my own, and learning composition on my own, through playing and through getting contact with other musicians and listening to music and look at the scores and so on. I'm a little bit. I don't know if I'm still on the right track or.
No, you are for sure. I think Liduino has another question for you.
Yeah, so we're talking about the piano. You were probably exposed to a lot of music, classical, romantic, and contemporary music and concertos. Yes. So how important has your activity as a pianist been to your compositional practice? How did it talk to you?
I think the piano kind of shaped my musicality, that's maybe a wonderful thing, but also in a way it's also a curse, because the piano is such a strong instrument and such a machine. It's a monster, and it shapes your mind. But I realized that. But it gave me a lot, because when you actually get in touch with the music through your hands, and through your eyes and your hands and your ears going at the same time, the absorption is very, very different than, say, listening to a piece of music, looking at the score, and with an analytical eye. It's very different, because it's visceral feel. Your body is involved and your mind is involved, everything. So that, I think, it's important, very important to me. This whole involvement with music, and of course through piano, it's a path to great music. There's so much in the repertoire, and even with piano, you could get in touch with orchestral music and other things. So it's a great thing, but also I realize its limitation. Because pianists, composers, perhaps often have this limitation of writing everything like a piano piece, being locked into this pianistic thinking, and I realized that too. And of course, I try to break through these chains that lock me. But also, it gave me a chance to give me a chance to work with others, which is a fantastic advantage. And of course, it's very useful in teaching. But another thing is that to understand the piano really deeply also shed lights for me in understanding sound and the psychology of listening. For example, the piano is for me very much an instrument of illusions, because the piano is a percussion, percussive instrument. But what we try to get out of that has to go beyond, has to transcend its physical limitation. We hear legato, cantabile, we try to get different colors when there's nothing there. Actually, all sounds the same, but through the hands, through the pedals, through our imagination, you hear very different things from the piano. And that gave me an understanding of how we listen to music, how we actually make up for things that we do not physically hear. And it's a very interesting insight into understanding the sound and listening, how our ears behave. Yeah. So those are the wonderful things that piano have given me.
Yeah, and when you were saying about that, the sensation of illusion that piano gives us, I remember the transcriptions, the Liszt transcriptions of Beethoven's symphony. That's like masterpiece of this, because you really listens the whole orchestra in piano.
Absolutely.
And of course, each instrument has its own particularity, its own beauty, but piano has this such versatile spirit that really is an amazing tool for the composer, even for composers who are not actually pianists, but use piano as a tool. And I think still today it's very relevant for those who are seeking the compositional career path, that we learn to play the piano at least at some level. And
exactly.
Maybe we can now talk a little bit about your your career as a professor of composition. And well, first I'm intrigued to one thing. As a pianist, also you started as a pianist, and you started to compose as a kind of way to transcend the limitations and the difficulties that the traditional music learning has. But when you are, how is for you, like the process of teaching composition? I'm asking this because I know some professors of composition don't believe that actually is possible to teach someone to compose, right? So and I would like to listen from you about how is your perspective around that you have maybe an approach that invite the student to practice the instrument and compose through the practice of the instrument, or you have more analytical approach that No, no. How is your perspective about
it's
this?
very, I know, like you are actually trying to find words to describe this activity. I
Yeah,
very much have it resonates with me because it is difficult. You teach too, I
yeah,
assume,
yeah,
composition. Yeah, it's a very difficult thing because yes, I kind of agree with what you mentioned. Some people would say, you cannot teach composition,
yeah,
and we all have this experience when we found there's so little we can do, because composition, first of all, that it should start because it's a creative thing. So the creative impulse first has to be there. That someone comes to this work who wants to compose. I think there must be some kind of terrible urge to create music. If that's not there, then I don't know how you can inspire people to write music, to express themselves through this medium. But having said that, I think we all teach students, and we all, if it's a job, we must do our best to give them something.
yeah,
I always find that if the students, if they can, hopefully from a rather young age, if they can start with playing instruments, playing with music, totally out of pleasure or out of curiosity, just play, and they develop through this ability to listen well, to hear music well,
yeah,
be able to develop some kind of sensitivity in the ears. They could hear minor and subtle differences between this sound and that sound, this chord and that chord. Then I think it's much easier to lead the course of their learning. What I found difficult is that when they don't have that, they come and you show them this and that, there's no difference to them. For example, you say, "Oh, you can do this harmony. Here it's more interesting, and you can do," but it doesn't make any difference to them. Then it's very little you can do. But certainly, I have experienced a lot of that in my teaching. So I always encourage them to try to develop more skills with any kind of instruments, a piano maybe, or some string instruments or whatever. But also try to develop a better ability to listen and to sing and to feel music, to express music naturally, and I think that's the foundation. Without that, it's very difficult. Now, if a student comes and we try to look at the works, it's very hard because sometimes I don't understand how composition works myself.
yeah,
To be very honest, because you start a new piece and you think, well, I know how to compose. I can finish this piece eventually, but actually, I don't know how to. I'm not this kind of person who can draw a complete plan and have everything really planned out and then just follow that path. And I'm very intuitive in that way. So every piece becomes a kind of almost like a new challenge. You face. You don't actually. You feel you are kind of beginner or something. Sometimes I feel that way. So with a student, when you teach them, it's also this way. They give you a few bars and you are working with them together, almost as if you are composing with them.
yeah,
So often I do this exploring the possibilities of what they already have in a few bars or a few ideas, and try to make some suggestions. Perhaps they could this could lead them into the some kind of a direction they could go into, and that's how I listen goes mostly with my students. But I try to encourage them to get to know more music. It's very funny because now with all this, I don't know about in Brazil and your students, but with all these possibilities, such convenience, you just need to open your computer and then the whole world of music is there. But people don't do it. Or perhaps it's too convenient. So it's almost like why bother? It's there, and I find many of our students know so little, or they listen so little. Their repertoire is very limited. But when things were difficult, as I grew up, there was such a thirst to dig out, to find things to get to know, to listen to, and to look at. So that's I try to encourage them to do as much as possible, because eventually they will have to find their own way or their own voice in the composition. But before that, they should explore as much as possible before they decide, okay, this, something, they find something.
Yeah, you were saying about that, and I was remembering about like before 2000, or let's say before Google. Before
Yes.
Google, the life was much harder. I remember when I was on an undergrad, and we wanted to have some books and some CDs, and even if you had money to buy it, you couldn't find it here. So maybe someone that were like a friend of the professor, they would have the book, and then you took it and you photocopied it and you made a copy of this kind of thing, because you didn't have like a lot of access to what was really new outside. And after 2000, things got way better. But no. And today, I see this kind of problem that you were pointing at. Actually, the students, the young people, they have access to almost everything, and they don't access it because it's too easy. Actually, I think they don't have these tools.
Yes, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah. Just the other day, I was talking to a friend about getting to know music. Now it's so easy now, And imagine a long time ago, like Bach walked for, I don't know, 2 days to hear Buxtehude, Yeah, but I think there's something about that, making all that effort with such thirst, eagerness and curiosity. The absorption of what you actually hear is different.
Yes.
Now we just turn on the computer and there's the music. Okay, well, it's great. Then we go to the kitchen and cook something and come back and the music is still playing and we are not listening at all. And this is it happens to me, and I think it happens to a lot of people. So you don't treasure it as much. I think there's something very, very, very precious that's kind of rare now, or lost almost. So it's an interesting.
It's like a taking for granted, right? That's this expression in English.
Yes, taking for granted. Exactly. It's too the convenience thing, like with all this AI and all that stuff. I think it probably helps a great deal to us now, we feel, but somehow this convenience also kind of robs us of something important. Because when you have to do it all by yourself and try to find out by yourself, the intensity is really something I think
Yes.
important.
Yeah. You had like to listen to that music, to that CD like 1,000 times because you were like so into that, and now you access music on the streaming platform, and then
Yes.
you listen like 1 minute. Oh, okay, I can listen again.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's the kind of a general development. It's general trend. Yeah, it's the concentration focus span is so short now. It's like 20 seconds is very long. Feels like now for a lot of people. I don't know if people want to listen to us talking like this for so long. So boring.
But I have like, excuse me, Lidwina, before we jump to another question, I would like just to ask you, how can I say, a part two of that question. That do you think that teaching music, especially teaching composition, shaped somehow your way of dealing with composition in your compositional practice, or do you see it as totally different words, like teaching is something and composition is another thing?
It's complex. I have to say that I have a very, very sometimes contradictory feel about this. Sometimes when I'm teaching, I feel, well, this is what I'm doing. It's part of this activity because it's very informative to me too. When we discuss problems and learning some new pieces that maybe I'm not familiar with, we look at it, and this is learning for myself. It's very interesting. But then sometimes I feel it only sucks out my energy, and I'm not getting anything back except the paycheck. So there's a contradiction. It's a job, but sometimes also it's part of the way the thing I love. It's part of my creative thing. It shifts all the time. I don't think it stays in one place. So it gives and takes away. Also, I found too much teaching it's very draining. Also at times. But also can be very, very rewarding too. So it kind of depends on the situation, depends on the student, the situation, and so on. So, but I try not to see it as separate part of my activity as a composer, because it's about thinking about music. Thinking about creativity and so on. It's really it's an exciting thing.
Now, when you a few minutes ago you mentioned something about intuition and composition, and when you think, for example, about Milton Babbitt, he used to plan for several months, and the last day he would put down the notes. You have on the other side, you have Edgar Varese, who did not believe in analysis or more intuitive. So how is your compositional method? Do you plan a lot or more intuition? Or and you can also relate to teaching. How do you teach it? You can bring back this.
Yes. I like I said, I'm a very intuitive person, so I go very much by intuition. I think that's important, and of course, intuition is not. There's no contradiction between intuition and learning and information. There's this. It's a kind of all our intuition is informed because we have learned, we have got in contact with so much things through learning, through playing, through listening and so on. So it's very much enriched kind of intuition. So when you composing, you are making a decision that might be intuition, but actually there might be thousands of information or calculation behind that moment. It's like what we do in life also. You make a decision, but you see a car coming and you know what you do, and that's a calculation, and that's not, it's an intuition, but also coming from generations of evolution of your mind. You calculate the distance, and
in sport, like
it's a second, that kind of thing. So it's not just go by the feel or something, but it's something that's intuition anyway. So I'm pretty much intuitive, but doesn't mean I don't try to plan my pieces. I always start with usually though I start with something, maybe some kind of idea. Then I begin to look at this idea and as if looking at a character in a novel, and I try to understand this guy or this woman and what their psychology is, what maybe they'll do this and do that, and then the picture becomes gradually from very vague and then becomes more clear and more clear. Then as you work into the piece, then you more or less know where it would go and how it would end, and it becomes, the structure reveals itself. So that's how I go about it, and I try to work that way with my students, but not everybody does the composition approaches it the same. Like Milton Babbitt, that he would plan out everything. And of course, now we can say, why bother? There's AI. You can make some demands, and then computer can give you the calculation, complete calculation, and you don't have to do anything because you put everything, you entrust this work to a system, and then your work is done. But that's not how I see music. I like to be involved and feeling it through the process. So there's a combination of improvising and also foreseeing what's going on and try to plan something. It's a combination of different elements.
So sometimes feedback, right? You can plan something, when you play it doesn't sound well, you fix.
Then you go change. Exactly. Is that how you approach? I mean, I don't. It's not. Is that how you approach?
My case, I don't know about Yan method. In Brazil, we do a lot of research. So in my case, I'm associated with a group of music and mathematics.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
I'm not a mathematician myself, but the group has mathematicians. So especially in graduate school, we do a lot of planning and reflection and document the process, so people can read, and we try the best to document the process, so people can read and learn from that. So this involves a lot of research. So sometimes I write a paper before
the piece.
Before the piece. So
that's very interesting. Wow. Yes. Well, as this exists also in China, in some institutions, and some professors also approach this way. And some schools demand, for example, for doctoral students, composition students, they need to deliver the pieces with their plans, their research before, that records the whole process of composition. Well, it can be a wonderful exercise. I've never actually done it that way, but because then you become very aware of everything you are doing.
Yeah.
You're leaving a track behind. And
I also noticed that when you come back to intuition, it's more fun. It's more because you do a lot of rational thinking, but sometimes when you come back to writing intuitively, your intuition, your intuition has also grown.
Yes. You're right.
Yeah. Intuition is not like the whole ghost. It's as you said, is a background of knowledge that you built throughout your life, and then you somehow you pick some things, and it's funny what Lidwin is saying, because actually I would say that he is a very intuitive person, also about mathematics and structuralism. He's like a very he likes to have this pre-compositional approach of building like structures, but when you listen to his piece, it doesn't sound like a very analytical piece, like when you listen to Milton Babbitt or Elliott Carter, that you listen.
Who are you talking about?
It sounds like an intuitive piece, but it has everything. It's very nice. I admire.
I was talking about my output, my compositional output.
Oh,
yes,
wonderful. Yes. Well, I feel the same. And when I listen to some of your music, which I did recently, I thought it's very natural and flows, But of course, I'm aware behind it there's something. There's a kind of something that's there's a grid that this thing is on. I can feel it. Yes, absolutely. That's admirable.
Yeah, and now I would like to ask you about your view about the current state and the future of the compositional production in China, in Asia in general. How do you feel things are evolving there? Do you think there is more space nowadays to propose new things, new styles, and if there is also, is there like audience for that or not? How are you? How is your view about that?
Yeah, well, it's a huge question. I mean, it's for example, in China, it's there's like everywhere else, I would say, probably Brazil also. I love to know more about the musical development there. But it's there's such a diversity of things, very diverse approaches to music, from the very traditional, very perhaps more like the old propaganda type of compositions to the most experimental, the newest kind of exploration of compositional devices. There's such a spectrum and everything in between. The extremely nationalistic kind of composition to a pure abstraction of, compositions. They all exist here, and luckily they all have some kind of place in the society. Even though the newer approaches, have of course less general audience. They are more limited in the institutions, in the musical higher educational universities and conservatories, and they have less access to the general public. But they are there. Then there are things in between. I'm kind of in the between, that you are writing something with there's this kind of contemporary music, but it's also not too difficult. For me, that's not a deliberate choice. It's just how actually I hear music, and that's how I, but that's the world. So it's a very, very interesting world. But there's also kind of maybe a danger of there's too much split between different approaches. So it's like you have different fractions, different schools, and they seem to have nothing common, and this split can be dangerous, I think, because after all, it's music. It's why separate all these different things so much, and that seems to be this way very often.
And do you think if maybe it has some relations with how the composers or artists, they deal with the relationship with the culture of the past? Because I'm asking that because here in Brazil we have like 500 years of history, and we have already problems with that. And I imagine that China, 5,000 years of history, you have different kinds of relations with different historical cultures, like maybe the ethnomusicological field in China has some relationship with one kind of contemporary music and not other kind. I don't know if there is this kind of divergence also about how people looks to the history, to the cultural history. Do you think?
Yes, of course. History, politics all play huge roles in these things. Of course, in China in general nowadays, there's kind of we call them the main melody kind of composition that is following the policies of the country. So that's more like nationalistic, based, and also very accessible, and often with subjects that are very much according to the line that the government has pointed, to the arts. And these are the perhaps most successful kind of area where people can get more performances, get more funding, and so on. So there's that. But then aside that, with the more creative, maybe more on the periphery of this, there are all kinds of different things going on.
Sure.
Like you said, different ways of relating to our tradition, to our history, and that's very interesting. For example, in your first question about me growing up, how I develop, I have to remember that it was very much when I was studying in the States that I start to recollect my memories in China and the experiences of China and the cultural experiences and the musical experiences. How my local music sounded to me when I was little. I was not paying attention, but when I went to the States, it suddenly, when I was developing as a composer, suddenly these things all just came back to me and became a real force inside of me, and that's very important to me too. So yes, this is all part of how people create new things, because it's through hybridity, through lots of different elements, sometimes unrelated elements joined together, and often this is how new things come into the world. That's just you have this all very different things coming together, and suddenly with a bit of that, bit of this.
Fusion of new ideas, right? They become
Fusion of new things, or new or old things, and they create something new, and I think that's how at least my experience was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nice because somehow for me it relates also about what we were saying about AI before, because
Yes.
we as human beings, our kind of creativity tends to be transformative. And AI is another kind of creativity, if we can call it creativity. But AI, they blend, they explore some possibilities, they combine some possibilities. But we as human beings, and when you were saying about the experience that you have combining all different things, you don't just combine, you transcend that combination to form a new thing. And
Yes.
I think that's the core of what we as composers we do, or we
Yes.
want to do.
Yes. This is what's maybe interesting about composition or any creative art, is that everybody experiences the world differently. There's always to talk about, because China is very nationalistic. There's a very big nationalistic trend here. So people always argue about what is Chinese music. If your music doesn't sound Chinese, then the question is raised. Is this a Chinese composition or is not? For me, this is a kind of false question. Because as a 21st century Chinese, what is that? You experienced the world so differently. Your experience of China is different, and you experience the world. You have seen so much, and all these things become part of you, and it becomes blended into your consciousness, and then it comes out in one way, and it's you cannot say what it is exactly. So this hybridity is a hugely, for me, hugely inspiring thing of different elements coming. And I think it's a productive, so I would say experience of the history of Brazilian compositions or music is exactly that. I mean, it's such a hybridity of different things, different cultures, elements, that wouldn't happen, let's say, in Europe, this kind of music that's happening that's happened in Brazil. That's what makes it, special and unique. Well, I do find there's a problem with some trends in Chinese composers, young composers, that they have learned some very new concepts, let's say in Europe or in Germany or France, and very skillful, and sometimes even very creative, but they start to sound the same. You cannot tell difference between a 19-year-old Chinese composer from a composer from, Paris. And, there's no problem with that. But it is a pity for me.
Yes.
Because, you're not dealing with your own experience deeply enough, perhaps. Maybe you are too much using other people's experience or kind of a model of some sort. I think that's for me is a possible trap for some.
It's like a common practice, right? A common practice we had in the classical, like Beethoven, Haydn, Mozart. They usually sound the same. So it's like now it's a new complexity, a spectral music and sound mass, like a second common practice.
Yes, second common practice, but you can still sound different, yeah. And of course, the common practice of the 18th, 17th, 18th, 19th century is in Europe. And it's a rather, it's a huge place, but it's part of the world. So there's a kind of common culture there, and now you've got the whole world, and I think it would be silly to all sound the same, I don't know. I think it would be much more interesting if people have totally different approaches to music, and they all sound different, and that would be much more interesting, and more diverse, and it's more lively, more.
Now, switching a little bit about your own composition production. Could you speak a little bit about your Piano Concerto No.2, Evocation of Spirits? That the link will be in the description of this video.
Yes, thank you. That's the title comes from the poetry of ancient poet Qu Yuan, who lived in the 300 BC, around 300, 200 BC, and during what we call the Warring States period, very, very what do you call that? Unsettled part of early Chinese history. What's interesting is that he was very much like a shaman, because the shaman who holds a lot of power during those times, who can talk to the spirits, and in this poetry, it's very much it's like a ritual, shamanistic ritual. He's calling the spirit, the dead spirit, to come home from who had died in other places. So So it's a calling of the spirit. So this is the kind of the extra musical inspiration. And this concerto has 7 movements, but it's everything is played attacca. So this is kind of a multi-movement, but one big thing, So there are different purposes of different movements. The 1, 3, 5, 7 are made with the same material, and they are shorter movements, and they are preludes, interludes, and then epilogue. And in between, there are 3, 2, 4, 6 are the main movements, which have very different, more important things to say, and deeper feelings and emotions, and a longer, more substantial. So the whole piece is structured a little bit like the poetry. It's kind of there's a refrain that comes back and back. That's calling for the spirit. In between, there are different verses that tell the spirit, warn the spirit of the dangers of the world, and also calling him to come back, because you should come home, and so on. So it's very much structured like that. Of course, there's little movements in between. Also, they are like a little bit like this kind of Chinese tempos. In between important structures, you have these pathways. Maybe there is some fountains, and it's outside, and so you can walk through from one building to the other. And these movements serve a bit like that, as a space to reflect and to transit from the transitional spaces from one thing to the other. So that's the general kind of structure of the piece. I don't know. I mean, maybe people can listen to it and find their own story in it. The piano is a bit like the poet himself. It starts with the very percussive things as drums, and starting with this kind of ritual. Yeah. So that's how the piece is structured in that way.
Thank you. And we also have selected another piece to ask you to talk a little bit about the work For Not Alikes.
Yes. That work is, I choose that work for this, for our conversation, is because it has Chinese ensemble that's playing with the piano. So that's kind of a little bit different. This piece was commissioned by a Chinese ensemble by the name of Forbidden City. That's based in Beijing, and they're probably the best of their kind, a chamber orchestra with Chinese instruments, fantastic players. And so I wrote for myself and to play with them. So the idea with putting a piano with all these Chinese instruments is kind of difficult, because they are such different things, with the different baggages of cultural baggages, totally different way of sounding. Like what we talked about piano. It's a very specific. Each note is you are hitting right in the middle of the notes. But with all the other Chinese instruments, not one note is actually in the center of the note. It's always shifting, the intonation, and there's so much expressivity just in the note production itself. So these two,
it's a pitch fluctuation, right?
always, yeah, very different kind of sound production and the way to see music. If you give a line of music to a Chinese instrument player, they never play it exactly like you give them.
Yeah.
They would already improvising with some other stuff added to it, at least some minor subtle intonation changes, maybe a little bit ornamentation added to it, a little slide, a little glissando there. So it's totally different musical cultures. And with piano is, you play more or less straight as written. So these two different sound worlds is a challenge. And that's what interested me, because I also see the possibility, or perhaps of combining of these two things and make it to work together and make it advantage rather than a disadvantage. I don't know if I succeeded, but with piano, I did. It's pretty obvious. I did something inside the piano, and using the piano as a percussion, playing with the body of the piano, and also the pianist sings in the third movement. It's a kind of aria for the pianist. The pianist doesn't play. It's kind of it's a little bit funny that even though the movement itself, the mood is very serious, but the act of a pianist singing all the way through this piece without much playing is it's kind of there's this kind of funny thing about it. So that piece I always remember that when I started that piece, what I really, really, really want is in my mind. Perhaps what draws me to writing it is a kind of sound, but I don't know what that sound is. It's kind of a coarse, but very expressive sound. Maybe you can hear in the piece. This is what this Japanese director Kurosawa, Akira Kurosawa, when after he made The Run, this fantastic film, which the music was by Takemitsu, and Kurosawa said, he said, I wanted to make the movie really what I wanted to make. What I want to show is the volcano black dust of Mount Fuji. What he really wants to film is that. I'm sure it's not. I'm sure he wants to show the story. It's based on King Lear. But I can understand, I can relate to that, because there's a kind of quality of some kind of thing for him in this visual thing, For me, is this kind of sound quality that draws me to it. Then you work through this whole piece with this kind of thing in your mind that drives you along. It's hard to explain, but that's how I'm sure you understand that kind of feel.
Nice.
Great. Well, I think we're approaching the end of our program.
It's amazing. It's been an hour and a half almost.
Yeah. And thank you very much again, Gao Ping. And if you want to say your last message to our audience, and be invited to visit Brazil at some point to have performances here, give master classes, and
that would be fantastic. We should stay in touch, and I hope people listen to this podcast and also the other podcasts in your series. Please inform me also, keep me posted with this, and I would love to see your series and getting to know more of your music and music of Brazil. I've never been to South America. I hope I'll get a chance, and perhaps a mutual, exchange of visits in the future. That would be beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Until next month.
Yes. Thank you. Same to you.